Welcome back to the Deep Dive. Today, we're embarking on a mission into a topic that is profoundly complex, historically rich, and frankly, incredibly painful to observe right now. We're talking about the relationship between the historic Black American community and the Jewish community.
That's right. For a generation, this alliance was, well, it felt like a non-negotiable foundation, didn't it? Especially during the Civil Rights Movement.
Absolutely. Cemented by shared experiences of oppression, a shared vision of liberation.
But the extensive sources you've provided, they detail what they call a heartbreaking trend. And it really is.
Yeah, showing this massive kind of accelerating erosion of that solidarity. It seems particularly pronounced among, younger generations.
Generations who seem to be missing that foundational historical context.
Yeah.
The very context that built the alliance in the first place.
And that's exactly our mandate for this deep dive, right?
Precisely. We're looking at source material that tries to rigorously diagnose how and why this relationship, which was once, as you said, lockstep, has fractured so severely.
So we need to cover the ideological turns, the economic arguments,
the political realignments, and just the sheer historical amnesia, really, all of which leads directly to the kind of modern, highly inflammatory rhetoric we're seeing today.
And let's not shy away from that rhetoric because the source material introduces it with, well, a genuine shock.
It really does. It documents certain young Black individuals becoming intensely anti-Semitic. The source actually uses a specific term.
Right. Neo-Zmadi. Can you clarify that for our listeners? It's a term from the source material itself.
Yeah, Neo-Zmadi.
Yeah.
As used in this material, it describes these new, often youthful or, digitally mediated forms of anti-Semitism that seem to be emerging within certain Black online space.
And the examples cited of this Mahdi rhetoric are deeply concerning.
They are. The source points to language so toxic, so historically inverted, that it directly questions whether Jewish people deserve the actions of the historical aggressor. Mm-hmm. The source calls him the little mustache.
And suggests the Jewish community should somehow take accountability for those atrocities.
It's stunning. The language in the source material is incredibly stark because it captures this observation that some young people, they just lack the basic historical awareness.
The awareness that if that historical aggressor had actually succeeded in his final solution,
both Black and Jewish people would have faced the exact same fate. The end game was the same for both groups. The source material emphasizes that image. Both communities being locked step into those ovens together. That is such a powerful, immediate reminder of a shared existential threat. It really cuts through, doesn't it? So the core paradox we need to unpack immediately is this. How did communities who share that fundamental historical life or death experience end up standing in such opposition today?
Yeah, how did they end up adopting language that, ironically, would have been used by their shared person? It's a deep question.
Okay, let's start digging.
All right. To begin understanding the mechanism of this fracture, we first have to look at where this rhetoric is being generated, the online spaces.
Exactly. The source specifically points to online environment, mentioning being in a particular digital space. It names a fresh and fit room.
And the source uses some extremely blunt language to describe it. We should probably note that for the listeners.
We absolutely must. The source material describes this online community, and we're quoting directly here, as saturated with retardation and outright stupidity.
Wow.
Yeah. We're reporting this language exactly as it was provided in the documentation, just to convey the source's profound, let's say, disgust with the content they observe there.
It definitely highlights the intensity of language being used in these echo.
And the specific quote cited in the source is the soundbite that sort of acts as a lightning rod here is truly astonishing.
What was it again? It argues, and again, quoting, "What do you guys think about what if the Jewish did something to the Germans that made them act a certain way, but nobody wants to talk about it? Like the Jews don't want to take accountability. That's why they was up to something." It's just a complete historical inversion, reframing the victims as the aggressors.
Profoundly so. And the analysis offered in the source material, it really highlights the devastating, almost unbelievable irony here.
The irony being
that to align with rhetoric suggesting the Jewish community deserve the horrific actions taken against them is to functionally align with the exact ideology of the little mustache man himself.
And if you step back, look at the broader context of that mid-20th century genocidal ideology.
Yeah.
The source emphasizes it went far beyond just one group, correct? It was about a very narrow definition of racial.
Absolutely. The source hammers this point home. This perspective completely disregards the fact that the Nazi regime's ideology targeted vast swaths of humanity it deemed undesirable or inferior.
Including Slavs, Romani people,
individuals with disabilities, and critically for this discussion, Black individuals. The very people repeating that anti-Semitic rhetoric today would have been, functionally erased by the ideology they are, however indirectly defending or rationalizing.
It's an intellectual disconnect, rooted in what the source calls a complete lack of historical memory.
Where the historical logic of the persecutor has been just dangerously adopted by a population that would have been equally persecuted, it's staggering.
It sounds like a form of historical revisionism that isn't just inaccurate, but actually strategically destructive to the Black community's own self-interest based on that logic.
That's the argument being made.
But the sources also bring up individuals who are actively trying to counter this narrative, right? People trying to bridge the gap. It shows this toxic online stuff isn't the only thing happening.
That's crucial to remember, yes. The source points to the important ongoing work being done by people like Pastor.
Tell us about his work, according to the source.
Well, his efforts are highlighted as doing some of the most incredible work when it comes to drawing the bridge between Black America and the Jewish community. It's about fostering a deeper understanding of that shared history.
And fighting the hate directly.
Yeah.
And most importantly, genuinely fighting Jew hate on the ground. The implication is clear. While the noise online is loud and destructive, there are significant voices actively working to restore the context that's being lost. And I think it's important we acknowledge that work because it shows just how difficult it must be to fight against that digital echo chamber.
It's an uphill battle, no doubt.
So the goal for us here isn't to judge the individuals using this rhetoric, but really to understand the context that's been forgotten or maybe corrupted.
Right. The context that allows such destructive, even self-sabotaging ideas to take root in the first place. The focus is on the mechanism of the fracture.
Okay. So to understand the depth of that loss, we have to look back at moments where the alliance faced ideological stress and how key leaders react, which brings us directly to a pivotal historical case study mentioned in the sources, the ideological journey, the reversal, really, of Eldridge, right? The sources present the story of Black Panther Eldridge Cleaver as a truly significant historical example here. It's about ideological change, realignment.
It's a crucial piece of context, and one that many young activists today, immersed in the digital moment, probably never encounter in its full complexity.
So Cleaver's journey is remarkable. Why? Because it captures these ideological battles.
Exactly. Specifically, the Marxist influence that, according to the source, began pulling the two communities apart decades ago. Initially, Cleaver was deeply aligned with the anti-Israel, anti-Zionist position.
And this alignment was cemented after he met PLO chairman Yasser Arafat. This would have been late 60s, early 70s.
Reportedly, yes. And the question is, what specific ideological promise did Arafat present to Cleaver? How was that alignment framed? Cleaver became convinced that the Free Palestine movement shared the same goals as the Panthers. The framework was explicitly global and explicitly Marxist.
So his initial belief was Black liberation equals Palestinian liberation, part of a bigger communist third world thing.
Precisely. A massive worldwide solidarity. The strategy, as the source notes, was drawn up just like the KGB drew it up. A classic playbook, it argued, for turning allied movements against democratic capitalist states.
So the suggestion is that this initial anti-Zionist shift within parts of the Black Power movement was heavily influenced by external communist-driven mandates, according to the source.
That's the perspective presented in the material, yes.
So the battle wasn't just framed as localized justice. It was immediately globalized, tied to rejecting the West, rejecting capitalism, and casting Israel as basically an extension of Western imperialism.
That was the frame. But then the story takes this critical turn. Cleaver then spent 7 years living abroad.
In various communist and Islamic imperialist sources. Says.
Right. This wasn't just academic observation. He was fully immersed in these systems. He was seeking refuge, seeking ideological fulfillment. He lived in places like Algeria, later spent time in Cuba, North Korea, France.
All places offering a different view on those revolutionary ideal champions.
Exactly. And this is where the reversal happened. The source implies his entire Marxist framework just collapsed under the weight of reality.
Was it gradual, or did the sources pinpoint a sick moment, a realization?
The sources describe it as a kind of shattering experience over those 7 years. He later recounted something like, the more I saw what was going on, the more I understood things were wrong in every one of those countries.
He wasn't seeing liberation.
He was seeing profound suffering, systemic repression, state control, the oppressive nature of one party. In places like North Korea, the complete denial of individual freedoms, the economic stagnation, it contradicted every utopian vision of communism.
So he realized these regimes weren't fundamentally different from the imperialist systems he originally opposed, just new forms.
That seems to be the conclusion he reached. This lived experience essentially functioned as a definitive counter-argument to the ideology he adopted after meeting Arafat.
And it led to a complete turnaround.
A complete 180-degree change of tune, according to the source. He went from condemning the Jewish state as an imperialist outpost to standing entirely in support of its right to exist.
And the source highlights the shift with a very vivid physical demonstration. Yes, when he returned to the U.S., he publicly hung an Israeli flag outside his home. That physical action symbolized his total rejection of that communist alignment and his acceptance of the Jewish state. A powerful symbol, and he followed that symbolic action with concrete political acts, supporting BASIC.
The Black Americans to Support Israel Committee. And BASIC wasn't just a random thing. It was a direct political response to a major international crisis point in 1975.
Remind us of that specific event.
BASIC was created specifically to fight against the 1975 United Nations General Assembly Resolution 38379.
The one that declared Zionism as race passed by a wide margin.
Hugely controversial. It essentially tried to delegitimize the state of Israel by equating its national liberation movement, Zionism, with South African apartheid.
And the sources emphasized that Cleaver and BASIC saw this UN resolution
as just the tip of the anti-Israel iceberg, a deliberate ideological attack, not just a political.
And the structure of BASIC itself is telling, too, isn't it? It indicates there was already an established split in Black leadership way back then.
Absolutely. The source notes that BASIC was comprised of established Black leaders, people who opposed the direction being taken by what Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. had previously characterized as the young militants of the civil rights movement.
So Dr. King himself, before his assassination, was worried about this rising anti-Zionist rhetoric co-opting the movement.
Deeply concerned, according to the source. He saw it as fundamentally hypocritical and actually against the spirit of liberation he stood for. This is such a critical nuance for you, the listener, to grasp. The internal ideological split we're seeing today isn't new, not at all. The sources show there was already a major disagreement within Black leadership about Israel and Zionism back in the 70s.
With established influential leaders actively opposing the direction the younger, more Marxist-influenced factions were.
They recognized the inherent danger, it seems, in aligning Black liberation with a political ideology that was, in their view, designed to destroy another liberation movement.
Okay, so this historical backdrop leads us directly to the ideological framework the sources claim is driving the modern resurgence of Marxist principles.
Right. And the source makes a strong, quite provocative claim here. It says, many Black Americans have fallen into what it terms a deep psychosis or a mental delusion.
By aligning with what it calls the democratic plantation ecosystem. That's a highly charged term.
It is. We need to press on that. What does the source mean by democratic plantation, and how does it explicitly connect that to Marxist influence?
Okay, what's the source's explanation?
The source uses democratic plantation to describe a political environment where certain groups are allegedly kept dependent on and subservient to the state through social policies and ideological alignment, regardless of whether that state calls itself democratic.
And the argument is this system functions to maintain centralized power.
Exactly. A goal achieved primarily, the source argues, through Marxist principles of control.
Let's drill down on the source's definition of communism here, because it's presented not just as an economic system, but as a system of pure power. The source is very specific on it. It defines communism as a system created with one overriding purpose: control. Looking at historical examples, whether the source looks at Mao's China, the Soviet Union, or contemporary examples like North Korea or Venezuela, the argument is consistent. Communism serves as a perfect Trojan horse for total and absolute power in the hands of a very few, or more specifically, in the hands. So the promise of equality and liberation is just veneer, according to the source.
Merely the veneer, the source claims, for complete centralization of authority.
And this is contrasted sharply with an alternative economic system. The contrast is framed as a difference in power structures.
Yes. The source contrasts this Marxist control model with capitalism, or maybe more accurately, genuine free trade.
And the core argument there: